Hey, welcome to Joey's Hi-Fi Shop. It's been a minute. Summer's been so crazy busy. Been doing a lot with the shop. I did like a side side sales project, which has been really interesting, and I learned a lot doing that. My hi-fi mentor passed away years ago, and he had some things that I helped his family sell, and it was really interesting. I learned a lot about a lot of different things, and his name's Creston Funk, and one day I'll shoot a video just about him. I've shot one in the past that I'll share, but I'll probably do another one, based off of what I worked on this summer. He was just a Renaissance person, and I learned to shoot photos from him, and that's how I became a professional photographer. For those that don't know, I'm a professional photographer. I do automotive photography, I do occasion photography, and I do like anthropologic and journalistic photography as well. So, and if you're wondering, well, how do you wear all these hats? How do you do, like you say you do all these things? I don't sleep. In all seriousness, I've always been that way. When I was in my teens and 20s, I got into hi-fi professionally while I was going to school. And then while I was in school, I also got into the startup business and doing tech startups. And I was living in Austin at the time. So I'm always busy. I am always doing something. I'm just rebuilt a VW GTI. I have put that thing back together. No engine work, but just redid the whole front cooling system. And I always have projects like that. I have a Lexus RCF that I'm working on right now. That nothing crazy. I put an exhaust on it, and I've ordered some wheels to be put on it. I'm gonna be putting it in a show called Wheels, Watches, and Whiskey here in Bryan, Texas. It should be really fun. So yeah, and then I taught 2 classes, and it's been a minute. That's why I'm explaining all this. I'm finishing up one of the classes. It was a 100-person class on intercultural communication. So yeah, that's like the back end of if you ever wonder why some of these videos get a little bit of a gap, that's why. Still drinking some Tavo coffee. Fittingly got my Chaos Coordinator coffee today. Coffee cup. So I had 2 customers contact me about 2 randomly different things. One was one was an enthusiast of the YouTube channel, and so we got to talking, and he recommended I check out this Jenny Lewis album, and I have to say it's a pretty fun album. I definitely, if y'all have albums you recommend, this is 2014. If you have albums you recommend I check out, just hit me up, leave a comment. I would call it it reminded me of like a folksy LaRue or a folksy Dev, if you remember those artists in that era. And really fun stuff. Recommend checking it out. Great for the hi-fi. Thank you so much for the recommendation. Yeah. And then I had another customer hit me up. I think it was Saturday morning. Yeah, Saturday morning. So this is Monday. And this is a long-time customer. This customer I've known since I was 19, something like that. I'm 44, so yeah, like 25 years. And in seminal years of forming my what I listened to, how I saw hi-fi, how I got into hi-fi. And he's been on that same journey this whole time. And one of the things that he asked me that I kind of went, you're right, like I haven't talked about this, and it's something I definitely should talk about, was acoustics, room acoustics. Because he is someone that has a high level system at this point, easily over 50K. I mean, easily. Probably, I don't know, speakers are, I don't know, $20,000. His amps are, if I remember, he has 3 sets of monoblock amps, so $30,000, $40,000 worth of amps and $8,000 worth of preamp, and he has a Riga P10 with an Aphelion 2. So I mean, big. I mean, that's 10,000. He's got a, it's called a Resolution Audio Cantata, which is an amazing digital player. I don't have one right now. They're 10 grand. They're really great. I've had them in the past. So I mean, he's got a really stout system, and he lives in an old factory building that was built in the early 2000s. And what was really interesting is that it was kind of like say the building's like this wide, and they were just kind of made into slots. And it was right when they started spray foaming and really creating barriers between, what I think of apartments or condos. So it is pretty well isolated from his neighbors, which is nice. But it's vaulted. I mean, it probably has 20-foot ceilings, if not higher. In some places, it has a loft, where that sees out to the space. And it is vaulted. It moves up. So his hi-fi kind of faces this way, and it vaults up, and then there's a little space up top, and then the kitchen back here. And it's multi-level. So I never talked to him about acoustics because I just never hit my mind. And his house is so aesthetically interesting that I don't know why it never hit me over the head to talk to him about it. He's also older than I am, and sometimes I have to admit, being younger, I do get timid about speaking to people about their acoustics in their home, just because it's a pretty nerdy conversation. It's one that, like, you have to really be into hi-fi, but I think this guy is. But for me, that is like how I started in hi-fi. Not professionally, just as an enthusiast, because I got this book. It's called The Complete Guide to High-End Audio by Robert Harley. This is the updated version. This is not the original book I got when I was, I think, 16 in 96. And it's got this really cheesy photo. This doesn't happen in audiophile worlds for the most part. I will say they have a photo of Elvis, and I did go on vacation last week and randomly ended up at Graceland. That's a whole other story. But yeah, so I got this book, and at the time I had a Marantz 2238B, and I had a Marantz turntable and Marantz speakers that I inherited just by asking and begging my grandparents and my parents for their old hi-fis, and my brother helped me rebuild, or my brother, I think, just rebuilt the speakers, and there we were off and running. And my dad bought me this book, which he kind of regretted for a couple of decades until I really showed him, like, hey, I can run a hi-fi shop. But the 4th chapter, I believe, let's see if I'm right. Yeah, the 4th chapter is getting the best sound from your room. And this chapter, I mean, I read in and out over and over again, how to get the best sound from your room. And so I read this, man. I mean, you got to remember, I'm 16 years old. I'm a nerd. 15 years old. I'm a nerd. Yeah, I have a girlfriend and stuff, but like, I don't play football. I play tennis. This is my bread and butter, and so I just start going into this. At the same time, I'm taking recording engineering courses at a recording studio. My family had a really interesting thing happen where we grew up relatively middle class poor. Meaning my parents had some money, but they also just squandered it. And around my age, and I had 3 older siblings who had all moved out right then and there, my parents started having a little bit of money. And my mom's taught 2-year-olds, and one of the 2-year-olds parents, was a recording producer named Maurice Perrone in San Antonio, Texas, and he owned the Audio Engineering Institute, which had an EARING at the end. You can look it up; it's still around today. And he ran this studio, and then he also programmed, and so you could take 2 classes. So I took those classes. I learned all about mics. I learned all about multi-track recording. There is a recording book called Modern Recording Techniques. Maybe I'll get that book and also share it with y'all sometime. Also taught me a lot about how records are made, and I recorded some, so that was cool. But chapter 4 here really, actually chapter 3 here is also really interesting. It's called Becoming a Better Listener. It just talks about, kind of becoming a critical listener versus listening casually, which for someone that runs a hi-fi shop is something that's necessary. I think being a critical listener as an enthusiast has its plus and minuses, meaning that you should really just enjoy your music. If you want to listen to it critically and have some opinions about the sound, great. But like, if that's what you're doing all the time on your hi-fi, then you're not really enjoying your music. You're just using these as tools to hear issues, which in my opinion defeats the purpose of, especially Rig, of just having a system to listen to music for fun. So let me talk about acoustics a little bit. In this book, this is like the core kind of thing you will see in all high-end audio circles. They're going to have a sweet spot, they're going to have 2 speakers, and work off of that. In this room, we have 2 speakers. I have a little sweet spot over here, and we have our setup. This room is a little livelier than Dead, and it's big. It's open design. It opens up to the whole house. The house isn't huge. It's 1,600 square feet, which is big for me, having only lived in apartments in like 700 square feet. But for a lot of people that own hi-fi, your houses are going to be somewhere between 1,600 and 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet. I mean, it just depends. Like, let's not fool ourselves. Most people are doing pretty well who get to buy hi-fi. It's a luxury. It's not a necessity. Even at the poorest of levels, it's a luxury, not a necessity. So that's what a lot of people are in. Some people have dedicated rooms. Some people have shared spaces. I've always kept my hi-fi in a space that I try and create as a shared space. I love sharing. I love having communal spaces, but that's just me. Some of y'all, like, you just want to be alone in your room, have this dedicated space. Those dedicated spaces typically lend themselves to acoustic treatment because there's nothing else going on in there. And there are going to be a couple of different types of acoustic treatments. There's absorbative treatments, and there's diffusing treatments, or diffractive. So absorbing would be like this bag here has a bunch of components for my laptop. And what this does is it'll absorb sound. It will also diffuse sound because there are hard pieces in here. And you can take this and extrapolate it up to big pieces that absorb bigger waves. So one of the things you want to know about with hi-fi's frequency response is that you have 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz is roughly what we hear. Most adults hear around 16,000 hertz and lower. And the lower you go, the bigger the sound waves are. And so you need to be more absorbative with them in terms of if you want to reduce the amount of, like, in the bass region. In high frequencies, you've got little small waves, and so this book goes all over it. It talks about the kinds of diffusers and absorbative features you would use, where to place them, which for me, typically, one of the things that he shows in this book that I think is really on point and a great starting point for a lot of you all that are saying, yeah, man, like, I want to I want to mess with my room responses, is this really confusing looking photo here. I'm going to leave that there for a second so you can kind of see it. And what it is that I have two lights here, right? If I have two lights here and I were to put two mirrors here, where the light shows off the mirrors that I put here, that's where it's diffracting off of on the walls. So if I put mirrors close to the walls, I can see where the first reflections of the sound are hitting, and I can place either absorptive or diffusing features to mess with that sound, to attenuate it. One of the things that I think people get really kind of confused by is, you know, well, how should my room sound? Like what is a good sounding room? And a lot of times you'll go to high-end audio shops, like audiophile shops, I will specifically say that, and the rooms will be very, what I call dead. They'll very absorbative. And they even have diffusing features. Let me see if I can find a diffusing feature here for you. They have diffusing features. This is what a diffuser looks like. Oftentimes, not all the time, but that's an example of one. And it's almost like when you walk in, there's this thing called an anoic chamber. I don't know if I said that right. Anoic chamber, where you go and you test electronics, and they have these huge pieces of foam, and the room is separated from the whole building. It is floating, and when you walk in, your ears get sucked out because it's so quiet. And you can have someone talking to you, and if you just turn around, like when you have your back to them, you won't even be able to hear them. It's that dead. And a lot of these audiophile spaces, that's a big part of what they do, is they're trying to create this like dead room, kind of almost like a studio, a mastering studio, where you're trying to critically listen to sound. And there is nothing wrong with that. I'm making it sound bad because that's not how I listen. That's not how I want to listen. That's not how I want my customers to listen. But I understand it. I respect it. I think it's a way of listening to hi-fi. But I think you're more listening to your gear and the recordings than you are enjoying the music. And that is a really expensive hobby to have, because if you hear something different on a component that costs $10,000 more, you're going to be like, oh, my system's no good. This thing, I can hear this other little sound that's different. And you're not really listening to music anymore. You're listening to that little piece of equipment that's making that little difference, right? And so these dead rooms, to me, are a fallacy of hi-fi, of audiophilism, where you go and you're thinking you're going to create this dead space and hear everything out of your hi-fi, and you will, but like then that's what you're doing. You're not listening to recording, you're just driving yourself nuts with everything you hear wrong. So what's my answer? My answer is, you want a room, if you're into acoustics, you want a room that doesn't have any glaring acoustic issues. Like, for example, in this room above us, there is a little like 18-inch to 2-foot regression in the ceiling that goes up, and it's square. I can hear the echo from that. I can hear what they call slap. I would love to stick some triangles, some little pyramids in the corners and quell that. That's something I'm definitely thinking about working on in custom building. And other than that, though, there are some also really interesting what they call knolls, like they call them bass knolls. N-U-L-L. I have to do it backwards so y'all can see it in the right way. And that's a really interesting thing. So in this sweet spot, when you sit here, you don't get pounded by bass. It is very, very null. You feel it, you hear it, but you don't acoustically get hit by it. Now, if you move back like 2 feet, it's prominent. If you go into a corner, it's super prominent. If you go into another room, you can hear it. But when you're sitting here, it has a pretty big null in it. And for me personally, I want an imperfect space to show hi-fi. I don't want to show it at its best necessarily, because then when people get home, they're going to get a little down, because most people aren't going to acoustically treat the whole house, especially when you live with other people and they want a certain aesthetic as well. Like, you're not going to have these acoustic towers and all these different things in your living room, which is where a lot of people put their hi-fi. Now, if you have a listening space, that's great. So going back to when I was a kid, I said this is all I used to do. Well, like I said, I had this Marantz hi-fi, and all my siblings moved out. I ended up getting 2 rooms. When I used to I slept on the floor for like 14 years before they moved out. I just slept. We didn't have enough beds. I slept on the floor, and then they all moved out and went to college and got their lives going, and there I was. The king of 2 rooms. So I turned one of my rooms into a listening space where I got the mattresses from the beds in that room, and guess where I put them, where those mirrors would be. And I built all these different kinds of diffusers and bass traps and drapes and just all kinds of things. And that's what I did for like 2 years straight. I worked out a little sporting goods place, saved up $600, along with the help of my brother. My brother is amazing in all of this story. He was 2 years older than me. Started working at IBM before he even went to college. He's a genius, and bought a Porsche 944. That's another whole story that put me through that time. This was 96. It was 86, and so just very impacting on me. So he bought me an NAD 310. When I saved up my $600, I traded it in for an NAD 312 because it had a phono section and some Wharfdale Diamond 7.2s. And I put that in there, and man, we started really going to town. I even had the owner or co-owner of the shop, Concert Sound, that I was buying from, when I was 16 years old, come and listen, and he was really amazed at what I had done in this little room in this little suburban area, and so I knew the power of acoustics. So going back to this customer that has this $60,000 system. And he's like, hey, so like, what about acoustics? And I'm like, that's right. Like, you haven't really gone through that. And in my mind, I was like, I had walked into his house, and his house is like a museum. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. And I hadn't thought about him wanting to make, a centimeter of change in that room for acoustics because of how aesthetically awesome it looked. And it looks awesome. Maybe I'll post an image in this video about it. And he was like, no, like I'm now I have all this hi-fi. I think, like, I'm kind of going, why didn't I do the acoustics first? Because I've just started messing with it, and it's amazing, the results. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's really amazing. And we started talking about it, and we started talking about like, what, because he was kind of like, why doesn't everybody do this? And I was like, well, I think one of the reasons why everybody doesn't do this is that it's very intrusive on the room, or, hear me out, or it's very expensive or time consuming if you're someone that DIYs or happens to build furniture quality structures for fun, which some of y'all might, and that, it's not a big deal for you. Because one of the things about integrating acoustic treatments into a room that has an aesthetic value to it, like meaning it's not just for the hi-fi, it's for everything, is figuring out what can you build or put into a room that's going to help with the acoustics, but also be aesthetically pleasing. And so you'll in my space, I have 3 area rugs just right here. I have, as you see, books and records and all this diffusion here. I do have a big space here where, yes, ideally I would put, probably I would put up some kind of moving blanket or something up here just to start, to kind of deaden that area so I don't get as much refraction. But I use a projector, and the projector goes up on that wall. And so, you know, maybe at some point I'll put a screen up there and then have a diffuser and have the screen come down. I don't know. You know, I mean, you can, it's a rabbit hole as to what you can do. But even this table I'm on, this is our kitchen table. You could put rug underneath it, mount underneath it. And if you have furniture like that, that's something that you can do to just deaden the sound a little bit more. Now, my customer asked me about room correction, like digital room correction, which to me is like, I don't do digital room correction. I was like knee jerk. But then I was like, well, I have to explain why. I can't have my customer just be like, oh, I don't do that. You know, I mean, I just look like a pretentious jerk. So digital room correction is used in both car audio and home theater heavily. I mean, most of you all that have a home theater, you buy some receiver and it comes with a little mic. You put it in a spot or in multiple spots. Has a little chirp that goes down, and you'll hear it and bounces off the wall. It takes measurements and it adjusts the frequency response for the acoustics of your room. Now, those adjustments are what I call like Band-Aids, digital Band-Aids. And your room acoustic treatments are also like, they're analog Band-Aids. And for me, I want to use analog Band-Aids. I don't want to use digital Band-Aids. I think digital Band-Aids are pretty intrusive. I think analog Band-Aids, while it can be very intrusive, I just have a little bit more finite control, and especially when I'm listening to vinyl, like a whole analog system or reel-to-reel, or, you know, some people are listening to tape right now. You know, you're listening to all analog, and yes, maybe it's not perfect, but it's like, I'm listening to music for fun. I am not trying to listen to perfectness. And that's going to be a big contentious thing. Some people might be, well, why would you spend $60,000 and not get perfectness? And it's like, because I've heard perfectness. Now you can go to any recording studio, you can go hear that. It's not unobtainium. I mean, it's just a very dry, dull sound that lets you hear everything perfectly. It's very rare that it's musical. These are two different things, and if people be like, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, you don't have to. You can go do that. Like, you can go listen to equipment. Or maybe you do both. Maybe you listen to music and you listen to equipment too. Most hi-fi dealers do that. I mean, I admittedly, as a hi-fi dealer, I have to be able to do both. So I have to be able to pick what we're going to listen to and then sell, right? Like what works. But for my customers, I'm not worried about them trying to be a critical listener. So that's why when we get into acoustics, it's a really interesting conversation, because it's a pretty nerdy thing to do, but it makes a very big difference. So what I would say is get a book like this, or get a book like Paul Gowan. You know, if you don't follow Paul Gowan on YouTube, highly recommend Paul. I mean, he's like, I'm his friend. I highly recommend Paul. He's a really great speaker. He's well-spoken. He has multiple books out on this. He talks about it. He comes more from that audiophile side, but he's also a music lover, of course. I mean, he has a recording studio, Octave Records, and he's doing amazing stuff. Just different. It's just different than what I do. One of the things after a year of running this shop that I figured out is that, like, I like selling hi-fi that is designed and made in its origin, and I like selling hi-fi that is very approachable in price. So with Riga, I think that's one of the reasons I really like it, is that, I mean, I even right now on my website, I have Riga for sale that costs a couple $100. I mean, it's not super expensive. It's not unobtainium. It is stuff that is very approachable in terms of cost. And yet you can also buy, I mean, they're just going to come out with their preamp and power amp. I mean, I know it will be over $10,000. I don't know if it'll be over 20, but you can really run the gamut with Riga, and you know that whether you're buying the smallest thing and you're sitting there going, oh, they probably just make cheap products. It's like, no, they make really expensive. And if you're like, oh, they're just making this expensive product to sell it to me, it's like you can go and you can buy this really inexpensive one too. So to me, like, that logically works out really heavily. And so I see Room Acoustics as a space that, if you don't have much money and you want to get a lot out of your hi-fi, start with Room Acoustics. If you have a lot of money and you're not aesthetically bound at that point, because having a lot of money typically means you've started making aesthetic choices, you can start getting into that. I mean, it's always a good time to get into acoustics, but I think sometimes people are chasing the equipment, and so it's hard to get them to. It's kind of like sometimes in the automotive space, people don't want to do like really significant upgrades yet because they're boring. You know, if you buy a used sports car and you want to put rims and an exhaust and an intake on it, it's like, is the radiator and cooling system good? Is the engine maintenance up to date? Has the rear differential been serviced? Like, all of these really boring things to just make sure that your car is in good shape so that when you modify it, it's good to go. And that's kind of how I see acoustic treatment, is that it's something you don't literally see or hear when done super well. And it's something that getting other people to understand and be excited about is also typically not that rewarding, unless they're nerds like you know, or audiophile geeks or music lovers that have gotten to that rabbit hole phase. So those are the two customers that I had to kind of share with y'all. One, just sharing me some good music, which I'm always happy. Like, they literally told me about the album. I bought it, put it on, listened to it, and checked it out. And, you know, like I said, I think it was Jenny Lewis. Yeah, Jenny Lewis. Check it out. Multiple albums have been put out by her, and this was just the first one that I bought. I'm always buying records that other people recommend. That's how I expand my listening. I'm not someone that's like, well, this is what I listen to. I mean, I grew up listening to Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Led Zeppelin and The Doors. That pretty much covers it right there. And then after, you know, like during that phase also, I guess Iron Maiden, Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer, Danzig. I mean, not a huge repertoire. The Beatles maybe. And so it took me like just meeting people like Will that you've seen on this channel, just really opening up my mind to different sounds and ways of music being made. So hope you all enjoyed this one. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up, and y'all have a wonderful day.